Let me begin our meeting, which I will do with a prayer in a moment. But before doing that, I captured, there are a number of people giving reports, were asking where they might make a recognition of the traditional owners. That would always be before a prayer, not be something that is after the prayer. So I do that now, that we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, both those who are past, present and emerging, in all the lands and places in which Wesley Mission operates. This is an important meeting in the life of the mission. I'm pleased so many are here. It is raining outside, slightly, and I think it's going to carry on for about 6 days, so I'm told. So we've got that to look forward to. I hope you'll understand that I'm going to, in this opening prayer, just mention two people who have been very much part of the mission, whose lives are no longer with us. There's Beverly Smith, who for many years was a member of our board and engaged in the life of the mission. She was on the board on which I was appointed superintendent of Wesley Mission, as was Jim Pendlebury. Jim Pendlebury was not only a member of the mission for many, many years, he was a senior officer of the mission. And the death of those two people have a sense of poignancy for all of us as we look back and as we look forward. So I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, ask you to stand and remember those two people who served this mission so well. And then as you remain standing, I'll offer a prayer asking God to bless our meeting. For all that have served in this place, we offer our memory of them to you, and their life that has contributed so much to us may continue to be a blessing to us. Guide this meeting and grant us in every way your presence and your purpose in the name of Christ. Amen. Please be seated. Before coming to the minutes, when it comes to any questions that you may have, we don't usually have lots and lots of questions, but if we do, there is a strict way in which we have to deal with that. COVID is rewriting the rules, as it were, and that's, if you've got a question, please ask you to raise your hand so it can be seen from the front here. Move to the aisle, the nearest aisle, and when it's your turn, put on a disposable mask that will be provided for you. We have all the gifts of these things available to you, and you'll be given the place where you can go and a microphone on which you can ask the question appropriately. But that I don't expect is going to happen for some time yet. So we have the minutes of the meeting that was held in 2019, Wesley Mission annual meeting. Now, has everybody had these? This part of the difficulty of this is that we don't know who was here last year and this year in this meeting as we are now, but they've been distributed to those that were here last year at the meeting. That's really the only basis on which it can be signed. So I'm going to ask that if I may sign those minutes as a correct record of the business that was exercised on the 25th, was it the 25th last year? What date was it last year? It was the 27th of October, and that was held in the Smith Room, because we could hold it in the Smith Room then, but we can't today because of the numbers and where we are. So may I sign it as a correct record of the business on behalf of the meeting? Those that were here. Thank you. Are there any specific matters arising that anybody wants to raise? Today, and if you'd like to date that for me, that would be great. Then this is not only a time for our annual meeting, it's also the time in which we offer to God our annual report, which is, and I say now in case I forget to say it later, they're always presented in a very professional and highly attractive way, and you have those reports, and they'll provide you with reading, I hope, after the meeting, not just what you hear now. My first annual meeting at Wesley Mission was on the 15th of October 2006. As I come to my final annual meeting and report, both as Superintendent and Chief Executive Officer, there are two things I would like to say by way of introduction. Firstly, how the landscape has changed. Few people remain that were in those days. I've counted 4 in the theatre that really were very actively involved there. That tells you something about the changing nature of the life of Wesley Mission. Part of our story at Wesley Mission is that we have handled change better than many others. And I think that's a wholly positive statement. Our journey to incorporate, I'm thinking now of the journeys in which we've been part of, our journey to incorporation and the challenge it caused to the Uniting Church. Many of you will know nothing about that, but the challenge that was very real in helping us to understand and for others to understand why it was essential for us. The strengthening of so many aspects of our Christian witness and our church life. The all-round improved financial position makes our current situation far healthier and equips us in readiness for the future. So the landscape has changed. I could even say the landscape has changed dramatically in the last 6 months in terms of so many things. Secondly, what a year to reflect on. I had a person who's had a birthday coming up, and they'd made the decision, I'm not changing the figure of my birthday, I'm going to keep it the same, because I'm writing off the last year, and as if it never happened. Well, I understand the sentiment, perhaps more than many do, but I think that the title of our annual report, Moving Forward Together, articulates our determination, our confidence, and our vision for the future. I sat in a board meeting, board committee of a board, on Friday of another organisation, and they reported serious economic challenges and concerns as a result of COVID-19. We can be pleased to observe the positive way in which our organisation has faced and has moved into the future. And the future has all kinds of uncertainties wrapped around it at this time. The concept of journey shouldn't be strange to us in Australia. Our life has been shaped by a nomadic journey in many ways. Of course, firstly, by people over thousands of years, seeking to become who they were and understood by others. And they were before we ever were, and they have a story to tell. But there was more to that. There was the risks that people took in exploration and adventure during the years. The willingness to step out into the unknown. That characteristic makes all the difference. It takes us back to the early Methodists who were part of what it is that we have become today. The communities that has repeated and regularly had to change as they've been on an ongoing journey. And the positive features of the Uniting Church journey and coming into being is all part of journey. What a year we've had. But the continuing energy of our people is displayed on many fronts. Let me first of all just draw your attention to staff and volunteers. It's an important area I report on each year. In the last year, 2,251 Wesley Mission employees have demonstrated what it means to belong. I've listened and been thrilled at the stories of resilience and adaptability in facing challenging situations. Over the last year, staff numbers have dropped 0.8%, but with an increase in part-time workers of 4% and a fall in casual staff of 9%. Now, those are important figures because it's allowed us to move more people away from casuality into either permanence or that sense of real purpose and accountability. It's a purposeful strategy. Agency costs have also dropped by 15%. And during my time, I've been pleased to get to the point of being able to make an announcement like that. Because the less people we have by agency and the more that are signed up to the club, as it were, the more they're likely to keep the values and the vision that is ours. So that's been an important change over this period of time. Although overall staff costs have increased 8%, as I was reminded in a meeting just recently, we've got to also recognise that revenues increased by 10%. So in fact, that's beaten the staff costs that have gone up, which are inevitably going to go up year on year. The transition to part-time staff is consistent with this goal to reduce the reliance on a casual workforce and to onboard more staff who in due course will be able to better reflect our values and our vision. 4,492 Wesley Mission volunteers continue to facilitate so much of the essential work that we do. We could make the point, though I'm always very wary of this kind of mathematical equation, that they contribute something like 90,000 hours, saving over $4 million in wages. Some of our essential services, such as Lifeline, Sydney and Sutherland, wouldn't be able to exist were it not for people who volunteer their time and commitment to the vision that we have. On the general front of volunteering, there are many who are really struggling with the fact that they cannot do the things that they commit themselves to do volunteering, and they are desperately looking forward to the day when the door opens and they can get back to their volunteering. That's a part of our experience at the present time. I think I want, just in passing, to say it's a delight to be able to, though we're in this theatre for this, if you look around the building to see the huge improvements in our premises over these past years, and especially this last couple of years, you'll see that there's much for which we can feel very thankful to God. Continuing Christocentric focus, the lockdowns and the restrictions have all served to prevent the spread of COVID-19. But they've caused us also to respond quickly and appropriately to moments of challenge. The Easter mission, and particularly the Easter sunrise service, being a good example. The role of the superintendent and chief executive always has been and always will be central when it comes to Christian communication, especially in the public square. That is the role, that is the task, that is the place you have to be. But when the news was that we wouldn't be able to have our Easter sunrise service, I knew that would have an impact upon our communication. So I want to say how grateful I am to the quality of people who work for us. I'd like to pay tribute to Richard Attier and the team. They did a fantastic job to make Easter happen so quickly, from a time when we thought we wouldn't be able to have any kind of Easter communication, and increase the numbers by tens and tens of thousands of people that were actually watching on Easter Day. And the letters that came in afterwards and the commitment all show very important. This isn't just a bit of religion on the side. It's Wesley Mission at the centre saying, here is an organisation engaged in a vital community service and witness that is speaking about the Christian faith in the public square. I think it's a vital part of our work. Many congregations around the world have found a larger online audience than previously attended churches. That's going to be one of the challenges of our congregations as we get back into church life. There's a church I know in London that has a congregation of 400 every Sunday. They've been getting 20,000 every week watching their services. So it raises all kinds of questions that they have to address moving forward. I don't think they're preparing for 20,000 on the first Sunday back. But maybe it tells us something of the different kind of world we live in today, where people don't have all the luggage and all the ways of beginning to understand what it is to declare the Christian faith themselves. I'll conclude later in the report in talking a little bit more about word and deed. Capital investment for increased capability. The project to completely refurbish our Wesley Edward Eager Centre crisis accommodation in Surrey Hills remains on track with completion later in 2021. Naturally, I'm disappointed that it won't happen as quickly as I'd hoped, but it's more important that it happens. That's the vital part of that story, that we're part and parcel of that work. Many of you know how important working alongside the homeless is. And if I had the opportunity, and will not publicly talk about these things, I could tell you why homelessness matters more to me than perhaps many would know. Approval was also received to upgrade the existing Wesley R.J. Williams property at Glebe for affordable housing, though I have to say I can't think I'll forget very easily the meeting with the Sydney City Council Planning Committee to get permission to do that. When I was told there'd be 35 speaking before me, and their position was to be against the project before I spoke, I realised that we had a challenge on our face that particular day. But that approval is important. This partnership that will exist in the community to develop that property is also very significant. Further capital projects are in the line to happen, in the pipeline, as we say, such as the mental health treatment, the plans proposed to expand the available facilities at Wesley Hospital, Congregational. Wesley Community Housing Manager Lisa Ellis will share more about the importance of housing and the importance of working alongside people who are facing the challenge of where they're going to live tonight and what's going to happen to their lives as individuals and as families. We're supporting over 500 tenancies at the present time, with opportunity to grow. Property for those struggling economically remains a priority. Extending our strategy, Wesley Mission Newcastle Community Hub opens. That was one of the highlights, I think, for many people's year. At the beginning of March this year, I was pleased to open our second community hub at Newcastle. We have a long-term work there, which is now over 20 years, supporting people in Newcastle. And this brought together services in the region. There used to be what in language you might call the Newcastle City Mission. And we were given the opportunity to take on that work and grow it. How it has changed during that time. It was known at that time as chiefly being about homelessness and helping people in poverty. And it still continues to have those aspects, but there's now far, far more to it than that. And people in that area now know a little bit more about education, training, employment, counselling, mental health and well-being support, as well as foster care and other programmes. Our Newcastle Hub supports people of all ages, including children, young people, adults and seniors, connecting with partners across the Hunter region. I have to say, I think that our improvement at Newcastle is in keeping with the general improvement of the city of Newcastle. I remember walking down that Hunter Street and that whole area of Newcastle and remembering the story from thousands of miles of here when the earthquake hit Newcastle. And it's taken so long. And I remember the current Premier, who gets at least a good word in this meeting for time, but something when she was Transport Minister, trying to develop the work of Newcastle and how it has developed. If you haven't been to Newcastle recently, you should go there. It's a very, very different city with all the characteristics of that city. So it's great that there's a hub that's vibrant there. Anyone who needs to be and speak in that context can know that one of the great features of the hub is that you go in, and wherever you go into that place, when you go into that place, it doesn't matter what your needs are, they will be met somehow, or you'll be pointed in the right direction. That, I think, is a vital part today. Expanding home care and disability services in the Northern Rivers region. From the 1st of July 2020, Wesley Mission has provided the services. It's in the new year, but it was the work was being done in the past year that prepared us for that work. The services of Clarence Clare Plus support, including home care and disability services in the Northern Rivers region, supporting people in Grafton, Maclean, Yamba, and all across the Northern Rivers region is a natural expansion of the broad range of community services that we provide. We've welcomed nearly 50 staff to be part of the Wesley Mission family, and our focus has been on delivering a smooth transition. I'm pleased to visit operations in July and be there ahead of the opening of our new office in Grafton. This has added $7 million to our annual budget. So it's a significant piece of work, maybe a practice run for what might lie ahead when we talk about other projects that are there. General Manager of Wesley Home and Residential Care, Grace Chan, will tell us more about that later in the meeting. Wesley Mission Intensive Therapeutic Care for young people with significant disabilities. We believe people with disabilities should have every opportunity to live meaningful lives. That is why I'm pleased that we've created specialised homes for young people. 2 that for people aged 12 to 18 in foster care who live with complex disabilities. Foster care remains critically important to our work, and I'm proud to say that we've had another very successful year in developing that work. A partnership between Wesley Dalmar and Wesley Disability Services, Wesley Intensive Therapeutic Care for young people with significant disabilities will give 8 young people immediately a place to call home. I was pleased to join with Parliamentary Secretary for Disability, Melanie Gibbons, the Member of Parliament, to open the 2 cottages at our Carlingford site at the beginning of September. Suicide prevention. I I hold very clearly the wonderful work of suicide prevention that this mission is about. We must never, never give up an emphasis that has become almost to be named alongside the name Wesley Mission has been our commitment to help people in danger of suicide. It's such an important area of work. It's continued to gain strength, and during this pandemic, suicide is a very, very important point to raise. There are many that are raising it for the first time, I have to say, but we are continuing to shout a message that has been part of our story for so long. Those who listen to Friday's announcement in the media will know that that's the report that's given on a regular basis on the causes of death. The causes of death have increased by 6% during this pandemic with suicide. The figure of 3,318 registered suicide. And the point that I would always make in a place, if I was sat in a studio, those are the reported ones. Those are the ones that go through to be registered as suicide. There are many, many people, I am sure, who take their own lives, to which other kinds of solutions are given as being the reason why their life came to an end. Emergency relief. There's no doubt that Australia is in its deepest recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. And Wesley Mission was willing to share and respond immediately to the huge distribution of emergency relief beyond ourselves, but to special projects that the government were prepared to commit to it. And there are some people who will be in that situation needing help. And as I've said in many places, the poor are the last to recover and the first to feel it. So their extension of pain and suffering is always more than Joe Jack down the road. They're the people who know that that suffering is all about. Dave Allen will tell us a little bit more about emergency relief later. I mention a theme now, Parramatta Mission, just in passing because it's a current project. Many of you may know, but if not, then I can tell you at this point that we've begun a process to integrate the work of Parramatta Mission's government-funded programs into the life of Wesley Mission. This does not relate to Parramatta Mission as a church. This mission has a long history of link with the church at the centre of Parramatta as a city. But it's their government-funded services that we're talking about. It's a major project. At this point, we've begun a due diligence process, which will move, hopefully, if all goes well, to a transition period before we come to a place where we hope to come together in a permanent model. Should it proceed, the project will involve the integration of close to $40 million of work and service. Although this is challenging, the early signs are that we're moving along in a positive way. To say it's without challenge is ridiculous. It's full of challenge. But we know that we have been invited to be a preferred partner. We want to be part of it. And if there's some way in which we can work with our colleagues across our common uniting church, a partnership and allegiance, then we will do. But it is a journey. It's not a done deal. Let me make that quite clear. Word and deed. I hear this kind of dual description of what we are mentioned many, many times. Sometimes it is not used correctly. And it's important that we keep discovering what it really meant and means today. This is not a Christian organisation that has bolted onto it the concept of kindly deeds. So we're not an organisation that is Christian, but we say we are Christian and we do good in the community. That's not what word and deed means. Any more than it means that we're all about doctrine. Methodists were never dominated by doctrine. We are dominated by passion. And passion is what gives purpose. And purpose is what gives itself towards the community. And that picture of word and deed is a very, very different picture. As a community services organisation, we're not held together by a set of beliefs, but rather a set of convictions. We're not held together by a statement that says, these are the 18 things we believe before you can be part of who we are. We're an organisation that have a passion for those in deepest need in our community. And when we get near to that, we start understanding what word and deed is about, especially as it flows in and through the person of Jesus Christ. We'll continue to exercise our life together in the ways of the Lord in every way that we can. As I come to a close of talking about areas of our mission, I couldn't help but just mention our fundraising. This would be one area which we would get really worked up about. If you said to us a year ago that you're going to not be able to do this, not be able to do that, I'm pleased to tell you that though some areas have slowed down, or rather halted temporarily, and I'm meaning by that major projects, we had some enormous projects in line to do. They have not gone out of the door. They'll happen again, and I'll do all I can to make sure that they do. But that's one area. Our corporate fundraising, in terms of corporations, in terms of fundraising, is facing challenges because many people in business are facing challenges, inevitably. But I think it's an enormous tribute to all those who work in fundraising that our appeals have not held on, they've increased. The people have given to us. And I hear people sometimes saying things about people who give. I've heard people talk about our fundraising. You know, they're all old people. Let me tell you the people who've got the flexibility to give in Australia today. Many of the people who support Wesley Mission, who are looking at what goes on and saying, I want to get behind this. And I think it's a great tribute to our fundraising guys that they've managed to maintain that. Next year, when my successor stands here, he will no doubt be able to say how we've moved beyond. And that's just taking the assumption that we're going to come beyond this particular pandemic, talking about the things that we actually had planned actually happened. And I think that's going to be great. New beginnings and thanks. 2020 was always going to be a challenging year. And as we draw one era to a close and move to another, I'm delighted at the appointment of my successor, the Chief Executive Officer and Superintendent, the Reverend Stuart Cameron, and Stu, as we shall know him as, who will soon be before us, taking on my responsibility in January 2021. I believe is an excellent choice, and Carol and I will be offering our prayers and support to Stu and Sue as they settle into life in Sydney. I believe it is raining on the Gold Coast as well, incidentally, but not as bad as here at the moment. But he'll get used to coming to this cold place. I mean, I smiled when we talked with them, and they were concerned about coming to the cold. I didn't say, but I felt so you have no idea what you're talking about. Talk about cold. But we look forward to welcoming him in the life of this mission. He'll begin a 10-year appointment as an induction in early February, which I hope will be possible to be supported by a large number of people. I know you will be supportive, for it's a big job and one he's well capable of rising to the challenge of. We shall certainly be thinking of Wesley Mission as we move into the future. As I offer my report, it's alongside this annual report, and I thank Amanda Bailey for continuing the high level of communications that she has responsibility for. Amanda is amongst an increasing number of women who are expressing leadership in the life of Wesley Mission. If I have a little sadness, is we do not have enough women in the highest levels of Wesley Mission, and we need to make sure that happens. This is the modern world, and women are offering all across the world enormous leadership, not just part of the team, but the front of the team. And I want to just say, I think that we've seen some great appointments, and I hope there's going to be more as we move into the future. I want to express my appreciation to my two senior officers, chairs of Wesley Community Services and Wesley Mission Council, Michael and Keith, the board and mission councils themselves, my senior team, David, Chris and Catherine, and all our staff and volunteers in their teams. And especially, I might just mention my executive assistant, Margaret Griffiths, who will be an enormous help to my successor. I acknowledge Rick Dacey and all those who are providing leadership in worship and congregational life. And I could not conclude this report without acknowledging the most important person in the room to me, and that's my wife, without whom I couldn't do the work that I do. So thank you to Carol and to all of you who make this place an outstanding place to work, to minister, and to mission. We have some of our reports now, so I think we begin with David. And you're going to get your mask, I think, here. Is that right? Is he getting a mask on? Does he have to wear a mask? He doesn't. No.
think they could probably make some comments as to why I don't need a mask, but that's another story altogether. Good afternoon, both to those that are in the auditorium and those watching on delayed broadcast. The past 10 months have had to be some of the most unprecedented times that I've ever seen. I returned from leave just over a year ago and soon encountered Sydney covered with smoke, raging bushfires around the place, hitting global headlines, etc. Later on, during the year, I got washed out from being able to participate in an activity that I've done for about the past 20 years. And then we hit COVID-19, a global pandemic impacting the entire community. It's against this background that I present the finance report today. And one thing that has been very apparent in this entire situation is that every for-profit organisation, every for-purpose organisation, and every government organisation globally around the world has had to adapt the way it's operated. Wesley Mission has been no exception to that process. Each month, Wesley Mission works with about 22,000 vulnerable or marginalised people. And they range across all ages, from young people, young children, through to older persons. With the unusual circumstances that we've had over the past year, we've had the normal growth, normal work that Wesley Mission does. And so when I say normal growth, I know many of our counterparts haven't actually had this growth. Wesley Mission has had quite a significant growth in its revenue. And that's been not just because of government funding and additional government initiatives. That's probably about half of the $22 million growth that's up there. But the other has just been a continual, ongoing work of Wesley Mission to grow. With a 10% increase in revenue and only a 9% increase in expenses, and I say only only 8, the total surplus for the full year grew to just under $9.6 million. Now I know that there is a vast difference between things such as money and people, but I use revenue as a surrogate for the people that we work with. I'd also like to consider not just what happened in 1 year. Yeah, okay, 10% revenue growth. But I like to look at longer periods of time. What's happened over a 5-year period or a 10-year period? Over the past 10 years, Wesley Mission's revenue has grown from $124 million to $249 million. And that's a growth of 101%. And while I'm very excited about the 100% growth, I'm actually equally excited with the 1% growth. Why? Because it represents every life that matters. That extra 1% is probably another 220 people that we can actually work with each month. And that 1%, it's a little bit like the parable of the lost shepherd, the shepherd with the lost sheep. Left the 99 to get that extra 1. And to me, I see that in the revenue that's gone. Each and every year over those past 10 years, Wesley Mission's revenue has grown. Of course, those have been around a little bit longer. You recall some of the more difficult years. There's 1 year where Wesley Mission's revenue dropped about 16%. Yet in good times and in difficult times, we can witness the faithfulness of God in the ongoing work of Wesley Mission. And as an aside, I was doing a little bit of work which I hadn't quite picked up on the slide. With that growth of revenue and with the strong revenue and the strong surplus last year, over the last 10 years, Wesley Mission's surplus has averaged about 2% of revenue. We keep putting the monies back into the work of Wesley Mission. And where's that revenue come from? Apologies if you can't quite read the slides there. It shows the starting revenue 10 years ago at $124 million. Most of the growth of revenue has come from people choosing to work with Wesley Mission. It's not come just from government grants or people giving us gifts and donations and things like that. I think the interest income up there, as you could probably guess with what's happened with interest rates, has basically gone down a little bit. It's come from people choosing to engage with Wesley Mission in a whole variety of areas, a whole diversity of them. And that's the area that's sort of shown the biggest growth, which is in rendering of services. The other thing I find fascinating about Wesley Mission, or a unique feature about it, is that Wesley Mission is not just a, whatever box you want to put it in. We're not just an aged care provider, but we do provide aged care. We're not just a disability services provider, but we do provide disability services. Wesley Mission works in and across an incredibly broad range of people in their lives and the places. And this chart just shows a variety of services, including the out-of-home care or foster care work, the community and family work, home care, disability services, residential care, clinical care, training, and a broad range of other services. And I'd also like to express the thanks that Keith gave to the staff and to the volunteers of Wesley Mission for making all of these things come together. Finally, this slide shows the assets and the liabilities of Wesley Mission. Wesley Mission remains in a strong position to continue to move forward in the mission field that's set before us. And I'll just reiterate some of the comments that Keith made. Places such as Edward Eager Centre, R.J. Williams, Newcastle, Grafton, the intensive therapeutic care, and the plans that we've got around other places such as mental health work. All of those types of activities that we're moving into, again, just demonstrate the diversity and broad breadth of work that Wesley Mission is involved with. Financially strong, well positioned, and continuing the services that it does. Thank you very much.
Rick Dacey, Wesley Congregational Life.
If I might be permitted before I give my report, just to say, I know we have a formal word of thanks for Keith coming up, but I just want to offer a personal word of gratitude to God for the opportunity of ministering together with you, Keith. I'm grateful for our friendship, and I thank God for your leadership. I've learned a whole lot from you over the course of the 8 years that I've been here at Wesley Mission, and I know that God has amazing things in store for you, whatever is unfolding in the years ahead. And also a word of profound gratitude for Carol and the impact that you've had on this whole mission. It's really been quite extraordinary, and you see Jesus Christ shining through you. In December of 2019, this theater was full on Christmas Day with our combined congregations, people of different ethnic and cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds, all gathered together, singing together, Joy to the World. As our congregations, we shared hundreds of food hampers with our neighbors in need last year, twice as many as we had in previous years. And what was most encouraging, it wasn't just the number of hampers we were able to share, but who was the we who was sharing it. Those hampers were put together by Wesley Mission clients and former Wesley Mission clients and Wesley Mission congregation members and Wesley Mission staff members, all working together under the leadership of one of our newer chaplains, Dave Wu. And it was a joyful celebration. It was a joyful celebration of who we are as Wesley Mission. It wasn't us, the church, serving them, those people, the less fortunate. No, it was all of us serving together with one another, community, loving community, neighbors serving neighbors. We were moving together into a new year with all of our plans and intentions. But those plans took a turn when we turned the calendar to 2020. The admonition about our plans in James chapter 4 comes to mind. I first saw it in January when our Chinese congregation welcomed their wonderful new minister, Jonathan Chen. When a congregation welcomes a new minister, you expect the room to be full. It wasn't. It was a very lightly attended Sunday, and the elders were handing out face masks at the door. And I knew then, in January, that this was going to be a year unlike any other that I had known. And so it was that as February moved into March, we made the move, like everyone else in the world, into a new reality. Our first priority was to keep our diverse congregations together and to be caring for our people through digital and non-digital connection points. We established 4 weekly worship live streams in 4 languages: Mandarin, Indonesian, Samoan, and English. We had a lot to learn, and we still have a lot to learn, but we're grateful for the collaborative and generous joined-up spirit of the Wesley Conference Center staff and the Wesley marketing staff, as well as the Wesley IS support that has made that possible for us this year. In a matter of weeks, we developed a range of online resources and gathering places, daily video devotions and weekly Sunday school, Zoom Bible studies and prayer groups and leaders meeting, and even online communion services. Something that would have been unthinkable when we gathered here last Christmas. And yet I was reminded again this morning, as I celebrated at the Lord's table, I was reminded again that God's Spirit does not dwell in a temple built with human hands. God is with us. And even when we are physically distanced, His Spirit empowers us to move forward together. For months, we held one another together with care networks and online connections, with printed materials for people without digital access, and in-person pastoral visits for people in crisis and people living in homelessness. It hasn't been the same as gathering in person. And we've all grieved the loss of physical presence, of hearing one another's voices in song, of feeling the touch of others. We take each other's hands in prayer. But we rejoice that in the midst of it all, God has empowered us to reach many people this year whom we would not have reached otherwise, with the love, hope, and compassion of Jesus Christ. Through our new digital presence, we have had tens of thousands of views and countless wonderful interactive engagements with people not only across Wesley Mission, but across the city of Sydney and across Australia and around the world. Like Richard. Richard is a dentist who lives in a small village in Malaysia. Richard first came across Wesley Mission through Keith Garner's excellent and much widely viewed series, The Isolation of the Cross, during Holy Week. That's how he discovered Wesley Mission. He then started engaging in the comment community around our daily morning cup of videos, and now he's attending weekly a Zoom gathering of members of Wesley Mission and others around the city. And together they're sharing in encouragement and hope and in prayer. And he has said that the encouragement that he's received from Wesley Mission has helped him to be an encouragement to the people in his small church, in his Malaysian village, and to people outside the church, non-Christians in his small Malaysian village. By God's grace, we are moving forward together in ways that we could not have planned or imagined. I know that we've had a particular impact with people feeling isolated and cut off this year, not only by the pandemic, but by life. We've received a lot of feedback from people in the wider community who have thanked Wesley Mission for helping them to know that they are not alone. Our Reshaped Ministries this year have included a 4-week course in pastoral care that involved not only members of different Wesley Mission congregations, but people from other churches in Sydney and Newcastle. We've also been writing care cards for seniors in the community, and WCL's Wesley Connect team has been working collaboratively with Wesley Community Service teams in providing support for people in need in Sydney. Our Wesley Mission chaplains have had a really vital ministry of presence in this year. It's been a hard year for our Wesley Mission frontline staff who do challenging work and face tough situations in the best of times. This year, an expanded chaplaincy team led by Joe Garrett has come alongside both Wesley Mission staff and clients with an extra measure of love and grace and hope. Our chaplains don't just provide care, they build bridges of care and connection that broaden the bandwidth of our care as a mission. For example, there was a disturbing incident that happened in the wider community earlier this year, an incident that didn't involve Wesley Mission at all, but it did have a profound and traumatic impact on a small group of our clients. Wesley Mission frontline staff wanted to care for those clients in a way that was sensitive and caring and appropriate to culture. So the chaplain who responded was not only able to support the clients and the staff, but also she was able to involve one of our Wesley congregation pastors. And the pastor's cultural fluency enabled us as a mission to love, serve, and support those clients in a way that the frontline workers wanted to, in the way they were so passionately wanting to. We're moving forward together. The year ahead will present a whole new set of challenges to us, and the shape of our work and witness will have to keep adapting to a world of upheaval and uncertainty. But one thing is certain as we move forward together. Our mission as Wesley Mission, we are continuing the work of Jesus Christ in word and deed, bearing his love, bearing his hope, bearing his joy to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to David and to Rick for those two presentations. But now we're turning in a slightly different direction, in that Lisa's going to come and bring us a presentation that relates to community housing, which is so much there. Lisa is deeply valued by the team and by those who work with us. So we're looking forward to what Lisa has to say to us. Thank you.
As Keith mentioned, my name's Lisa Ellis and I'm the Operations Manager for Wesley Community Housing. It is widely accepted that moving house is one of the most stressful things that we do in life. But why is that? Safe and secure housing is a key foundation to our well-being. When we feel safe, secure, and that we have a place of belonging, we can work on addressing other areas of our lives, such as health, education, and work. Through safe and affordable housing, we can leverage opportunities and our economic outcomes and independence are improved. A greatest need household is a household that has an urgent need for housing that cannot be obtained in the private market, including those that are living in unsafe accommodation and people in rental stress, paying more than 40% of their income in rent. A diverse range of people have difficulty accessing safe housing that does not put them under rental stress. The general stereotype of people in need of housing are rough sleepers, people exiting from corrective services, and experiencing addiction. However, this does not reflect the range of people who we see needing housing. And we expect with the current situation with COVID that this will continue to diversify. Some examples are Suzanne, who can no longer afford her home when she has lost her job as a flight attendant with an airline. Kerry, who is featured in the annual report, who could no longer work due to an injury at work with her rental property becoming unaffordable. And Carmel, who found herself homeless when her children moved overseas due to a job offer. By being housed, she was able to receive the support she required to receive the medical care she needed for her chronic conditions. Social housing is subsidised rental accommodation for people on very low and to low incomes and can be public or community housing. This incorporates short-term accommodation such as crisis and transitional housing and longer-term general social housing. Affordable housing as a product refers to subsidised rental accommodation for people on very low, low or moderate incomes and is provided by community housing providers. People can stay in affordable housing as long as they continue to meet the eligibility requirements. According to City Futures Research Centre in New South Wales, there is a current shortfall of 100,000 social and affordable housing properties with 50,000 households on the social housing waiting list. Wesley Community Housing manages over 400 tenancies across Sydney, Central Coast and Newcastle. We are funded through the rent we collect from tenants and management fees for managing our properties. We manage a range of housing tenancies, the majority being general social housing and transitional housing. And we provide tenancy management, property management and run a tenant and community engagement program with our tenants. During 2019-20, we provided nearly 168,000 nights of accommodation and assisted over 5,400 people. At the time of being housed, 64% of our tenants were homeless, with the remaining at risk of homelessness. We provide our housing services in collaboration with a wide range of Wesley Mission services, including Wesley Specialist Homelessness Services, who case manage tenants in our transitional housing, Wesley Kickstart and Mums and Kids Matter, and the people we house in specialist disability accommodation are supported by Wesley Disability Services. Over 65% of our tenants access Wesley Mission wraparound services, including mental health support, financial counselling, training and home care. Some highlights from 2019-20 include the handback of 6 and 8 Fowler Street after refurbishment by Land and Housing Corporation, our partnership with the Royal Botanic Gardens Community Greening Program, which saw us running gardening workshops with tenants at most complexes, improving the complexes, giving the tenants the opportunities to learn and take pride in the places that they live. Our partnership with Wesley Training, providing training to our tenants in horticulture, which was accompanied by a working bee on site with Ernest and Young. This was a great day which the tenants and EY really enjoyed, and they returned for a second working bee where the tenants provided them with succulents as a gift that they made through the community greening program. We expanded the Kickstart program to Adamstown near Newcastle with a partnership with Wesley Dalmar. and we continue to partner with Homes for Heroes to provide medium-term accommodation. During the COVID period, we continued to work face-to-face. At the start of COVID, we received many phone calls from our tenants asking about supplies such as toilet paper and face masks. There was a lot of confusion for many of our tenants during the initial COVID period, with many tenants confused about what they could and couldn't do, and many scared to leave the house due to their complex health needs. In partnership with Wesley Emergency Relief, we delivered care packages to all our medium and long-term tenants. We also undertook wellbeing calls to most tenants to check how they were going and what support they needed. And we delivered gardening supplies and plants so they could remain active in their gardens and access fresh herbs and veggies. Many experienced a decline in their mental health and commented on the impact of a simple phone call. Our story is best told through the experience of our tenants. 93% expressed satisfaction with Wesley Community Housing, with 84% satisfied with the overall property condition, both above industry benchmarks. 76% of tenants exit into longer-term housing, which includes transfers to our general social housing stock. David is a long-term tenant who has ongoing issues with his knees and likes to regularly drink to soothe the pain. His drinking increased and his mobility declined at the start of COVID. One night, David tripped on the items that are stored in his unit, and his neighbour phoned an ambulance after hearing him call out. The neighbour also called Wesley Community Housing. David was taken to hospital, and our community engagement officer, Lisa, and his tenancy officer, Peter, went to visit him and spoke to the social worker about getting him some additional support. Through this experience and his trust in Wesley Mission, David has recovered. He's received the support he needed, has stopped drinking, has reconnected with his family, and had a major clean-up of his unit, providing him with more room to move around so he could continue to stay at home. One of our other longer-term tenants, Richard, has spoken about his experience during COVID, especially living in a COVID hotspot. Richard expressed, "So many people have been affected, it makes you think about what we need to do. Supporting each other is the most important note." Richard has used the COVID time to increase his fitness and go to the gym more regularly. Richard is a regular attendee at our community engagement events and regularly builds planter boxes for some of our properties. Richard's story and his COVID experience will be in the December newsletter on the Wesley Mission website if you want to read more. Wesley Community Housing is looking to continue to grow and diversify our portfolio so we can continue to provide more housing to more people. A DA for the refurbishment of the RJ Williams site at Glebe has been approved for affordable housing. This will deliver 64 studio units and 9 4-bedroom apartments for families. And our goal is a socially cohesive and engaged community that provides residents with opportunities to thrive. We are also concentrating on creating connected community housing blocks where social isolation is reduced through safe opportunities to connect. We have recently received a sports and physical activity grant through the Department of Health. Through this, we are providing weekly activities to our tenants with a focus on wellbeing. We've already kicked off our weekly walking group in Liverpool and monthly tenant excursions, with the first being to the Mount Adam Botanic Gardens. If you'd like to find out more about our community housing activities, please do not hesitate to contact us.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. And now another area of which we are providing for people in immediate need. Dave, you're going to present to us on Wesley Emergency Relief. Welcome to Dave.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everyone. So Wesley Mission has been funded by the Federal Department of Social Security to provide emergency relief since about 2003. We're currently funded to support people from the Illawarra area all the way up to Ballina. Unfortunately, nothing over the Great Divide. Emergency relief aims to provide individuals and families to navigate financial crisis and build financial well-being, capability and resilience by assisting people to address their immediate and basic needs in that financial crisis. For those accessing financial relief, they often have low income, or little to not low income, making them vulnerable to large and unexpected expenses, such as medical costs, dental costs, home repairs or repairs to car. They often find they have low financial literacy, making it difficult to live within their means and resulting in lack of financial reserves to access in a time of crisis. Access to emergency relief is considered universal. We work as a safety net to help people experience financial distress or hardship and have limited means and resources to help them out of that financial crisis. Our manager for emergency relief, Sarah Seminara, describes it as when people are in crisis, our help can mean the difference between having a roof over their head that night or not. Our emergency relief can put food into kids' bellies. So during normal times, the distribution of emergency relief was relatively straightforward. I do say relative, where we had an array of community partners up and down the eastern seaboard, and we would try and connect the people who connected to emergency relief to those partners so they could get the wraparound care and support they were needing. However, 2020 is no normal year. This year we've seen the back end of a multi-year drought, bushfires that have never seen the magnitude of before, floods, and now a global pandemic. That has meant that the government has provided Wesley Mission with additional funds to support people that have been impacted. This has allowed us to rethink how we use emergency relief. And so we've tied it now into the strategy of do all the good you can via the strategic vision of hubs and supporting the no wrong door approach. However, during COVID and the associated restrictions, many of our partners have had to close their doors. So we've had to rethink and reimagine how we engage people who are stuck in community. Thankfully, we've been able to link in better with our existing services such as Brighter Futures, Opportunities Pathways, Targeted Early Intervention and Community Housing to reach out to the people who were stuck in their homes and struggling and needing support in these unprecedented times. We've also created an online application process through our webpage so that we can continue to reach people who are in need. This has meant that during COVID, emergency relief, in spite of many of the face-to-face services closing, we've actually increased how and where we support people, many of whom have never been in financial hardship before and sadly are now becoming repeat returning clients. Through our Wesley partners, we've been able to distribute a range of boxes of essentials to support people, and now we've transitioned to digital support. So we're able to support people with digital groceries and then the home delivery service, the range of different home delivery services to support them. Emergency relief has been able to support people maintain their housing tenancies, put food on the table, and to cover unexpected medical bills and utilities. One client has said, COVID had such a huge impact on us, it has taken away our quality of life. But even though I didn't qualify for any government assistance, we were still hope with Wesley Mission. My daughter and I will never forget how you fed us, you sheltered us when we were in dire need. Thank you for your big hearts and showing us God's grace and giving us reassurance in these terrible times. Emergency relief has become more of a disaster response through the additional government funding. As a result, we've been able to change how we do things so that we can be on the ground and support people in communities impacted by natural disasters. One woman who reached out to our services was from a farm that a bushfire had swept through before Christmas. She shared her story with our members, which brought us to tears. The fires had destroyed her livestock worth tens of thousands of dollars, and she and her husband were about to sell and euthanize their surviving animals. So you can imagine the heartbreak that she must have been going through. because her husband also had major surgery and they had no longer had any way to pay for their specialist bills. So she tried to secure funds elsewhere, but all she had been offered was a $12.50 voucher to buy groceries. So she was emotionally overwhelmed when we told her we could cover her husband's specialist fees, as well as help her with petrol and grocery vouchers so that she could have meals and drive to and from the specialists. So 2020 has been an amazing year. Through emergency relief, we've been able to support 3,586 people with a range of supports such as food vouchers, medical bills, utilities, rent arrears and phone support. As you can see in Figure 1, women apply for emergency relief almost at a double rate to men. And as you can see in Figure 2, we've got a significant number of people who identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander accessing emergency relief. And this is increasing over the last 2 years. And in Figure 3, you can see that sole parents with dependents accessing emergency relief have doubled in the last 3 years. So we're predicting that these trends will continue. With an increase of the rates of domestic violence through COVID, we believe that we will continue to see single parents with dependents accessing emergency relief as they re-establish their family as they leave violence. We also expect an increase with people who, with the decreasing government benefits over the next few months and the projected recession, we're expecting people's hardship to only deepen and therefore the reliance on emergency to only increase. Recently, Wesley Mission's fundraising campaign has been raising additional funds for emergency relief in the Mid-North Coast to be facilitated through the Taree Hub. And this week, I understand that they've raised approximately $65,000 to support people in the region. So with a new staff member starting there in November, we continue to find new ways to help people in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Grace is relatively new to Wesley Mission, so I'm very pleased that she's one of our presenters today, and she's going to tell us about home care, and undoubtedly that will touch on the new work that we've done up the coast. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, and thanks for the opportunity to share some of our home care team's success stories, as well as some of their exciting achievement and also some of the development. I think Keith just mentioned that I'm reasonably new to Wesley Mission, and I actually started with Wesley Mission in March 2020. So when people talk to me about what it normally is like, I was like, hang on a minute, I have no reference point, because ever since I've been in Wesley Mission, it's been COVID-19. And I think the home care story, for me, when I reflect on it, will be one of the demonstration of courageous commitment. And I think one of the stories that quite a few people would heard is that right at the very beginning of the COVID-19, we didn't know what impact there were, apart from everyone was really scared. And we have 20 home care staff who actually put their hand up and say, well, if we have a client, if we know someone who is COVID positive and want to support, they will go in and support them. So at the time when everybody's really scared of the impact, people actually put their hand up. I was like, wow, that's Wesley Mission. So when we talk about home care services, quite often people think home care package. However, our home care team actually cover more than just home care packages. We have funding from the Commonwealth Home Support Program, which provide older people, seniors with just a little bit of need to stay at their home and also, to continue to be active, maintain their own life. And then we have home care packages where people actually need a little bit more support, have a bit more complex issues. And I think one of the very important things is that they might need to get equipment to support them. They might actually need more health services, so physio or OT services or sometimes nursing to support them. And perhaps not a lot of people actually know that our home care team also provide NDIS services, because there are people who are at home and require some basic services to enable them to maybe continue to work or maybe continue to study. So that's really important as well. We have funding from veteran home care, as well as short-term restorative care. We used to have TACP, but recently we have a new program that's supporting people in their recovery if they have a hospital stay and need some support so that they can get back on their own feet. So that's really important. And I guess another thing that perhaps not a lot of people know is that our home care team also manage the community visitors scheme, which provides social support and companionship to older people who stay at home and who got this visit. They also visit residents in residential aged care facilities to maintain that social connectedness, which is really important. Because as you're aware, that social connection is such an important thing for human being and for our health and well-being, as well as sometimes we need a little bit of hope to continue the journey and to continue to fight against, maybe it's illness, maybe it's an emotional or mental health issue. I think this is a very important part of it. In our home care services, we have a structure. We have our manager of home care service, Margaret Christopher. She's here with us today, and she's until this year, we have 2 operations managers, Northwest and South. But in 2020 and 21, we actually had a 3rd manager who looks after the Northern Rivers region, which was really exciting. And among them, they actually manage 34 service team leaders. The service team leaders are people who actually support our clients through putting their care plans together and helping them to identify what services they need. Because sometimes if you were just asked, so what do you need? You might not actually know, because you might not even know what's available. So the service team leaders have a really significant role in terms of helping people, identifying their needs, identifying the services or the type of services that they can benefit from. And sometimes, obviously, they need to do some advocacy, because they might be getting some very basic service, but their need becomes more complex. They need to have a home care package. They might need to actually upgrade their package, and for an older person, that could be quite a challenging experience, especially if they don't get any support from their families or their loved ones. And our support workers, the heroes I was talking about earlier, people who put their hands up, it is really important to be aware that during COVID-19, our services continue. We did not actually stop our services. There was a slight drop in terms of requests for services. Some of the older people, because of their fear of people coming into their home, actually stopped services for, I think, about a month. And in the second month, they realized that if they don't get the services, they won't be able to stay at home. I think there was an older lady who actually ran out of food and needs someone to actually provide her with food. And our staff just go, yep, let's go and do it. So that's really important. I also put down there that there are support services for our service, because obviously with 251 people there, we can't just let everyone running around without that support. So our rostering team actually manage the everyday schedule of that 200 odd people. And important, because I was saying it earlier that people might buy things, they might purchase other services, and that's where we need to make sure that the suppliers actually got paid for. Otherwise, they might not get their next service, or they might not get a supply next month. So that's really important. And with all the changes in government's requirements, our caring team is also important, because we need to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're compliant, because that was the baseline we actually need to work upon. So I think there's a lot of people at the back end that support the home care team to deliver services that you might not be aware of previously. So in the last year, we actually support 1,314 people through our social support. And like I said social support, social connectedness is so important. So altogether, you could see that we have roughly 3,000 people that receive services from the Commonwealth Home Support Program. But on top of that, We also have over 1,400 people using their packages. So if you think about the volume of people receiving services every day, Margaret and her team have been working really hard to recruit more staff so that we can cut down on our agency costs, making sure that services are delivered by our staff who actually understand the Wesley mission value as well as adhere to the Wesley mission value. I think one of the very important things that Keith already mentioned is our development in the Northern River regions, and that's really exciting. Not only that it's a new region and we can support more than 500 people in that area, I think, through our home care packages as well as NDIS support services, but it also enable us to actually strengthen our clinical care services because they actually have community nursing. And in our plan for this year, we already have a physio starting, so an in-house physio, which will mean that our clients will have much better support. We will have nursing. And another opportunity is palliative care, because a lot of people would choose to stay in their own home for as long as possible. More and more people choose to have end of life at home, so that there's an opportunity for us to partner with Northern New South Wales Health to actually deliver palliative care at home. And that certainly means we have to support our staff to develop some more skills and some more capability. But I think that's a very important thing because I was sharing with Chris a bit earlier that even with people with disability, they don't have to move out from their home. They don't have to actually go into a hospital if they're palliating. We can support them in their own home if we have that capacity. So this is really important development for us, and we would hope that you would keep us in your prayer moving forward. Thank you.
It's not for me to preempt your response or non-response, but we have the opportunity if you have any questions that you want to ask. We are excited by our presentations, but time makes it difficult. But if there's anybody who wants to ask a question, then please feel free to do so. You need to raise your hand if you would like to do that. But I'm not that bothered that not many of you have raised your hands, simply because of the time that we're restricted by. But thank you to all those who gave presentations. All of them were not only impressive, but I think they gave us the opportunity to have a window into the work that we're about. And I'm hoping that the report that you've got here, you'll take home and read in greater depth than you've got there. Michael Anderson took over as our board chair and has done an excellent job in being chair of that board. And it gives me pleasure to invite him to come along and give words from our board chair.
Thank you, Keith.
Not always of the person, incidentally. I noticed Rick Dacey became Andy Chen, and you become you put weight on and,
no, not exactly.
and gained a few years,
exactly
I think, in this.
Although my brother at the moment has an amazing beard down here with a big moustache, so maybe one day. Well, I obviously had the opportunity to reflect on the year that we've just had. And of course, it's been a very difficult year, as we've talked about in a number of different ways today. But as I reflected, I was reflecting on how I felt about Wesley Mission and how it had run itself over the year, what we'd achieved and so on. And I guess the key word that came to me was pride. And I want to share with you 6 areas where I, and I'm sure the board, and I'm sure many of you are very proud about. The first one is pride in our response to COVID. Now, I've been actually quite proud of Australia, particularly in sort of March, April, May and so on, where it seemed like the whole country was doing its best to move quickly, government, institutions, everywhere else. But Wesley Mission did exactly the same thing and did it very effectively. From crisis management teams to people very quickly pivoting to work from home where it was appropriate, to diligent preparation in order to protect those who are most in need in areas like residential aged care and many others we could care to name. We could see that work being done. It was being done very well, very diligently. As we heard from Grace, there were people who were willing to put up their hand to serve those who may be COVID positive, and that's something I think we can all feel proud of. I also feel very proud of our commitment more generally. As always, we saw the results of an engagement survey this year, and it does show that we have some room for improvements in some areas, but it also shows that we are much higher than the community services industry in our response to some key areas. And I'll just read you 3 of those. 99% of respondents from Wesley Mission say, I believe in the values of Wesley Mission. 99%. 98% say, I believe in the overall purpose of Wesley Mission. And 97% say, I like the kind of work I do. And I imagine that's not because it's easy, it's because it's worth doing. So I'm proud of our commitment. I'm also proud in Wesley Mission's public reputation. So again, from a different consultant, we commissioned another update on how we are seen externally. And we found we were compared against other similar sorts of community services organisations, many of whom were bigger, some of whom were about the same size. And we found the following were most highly associated with Wesley Mission from that group. Trustworthiness, advocacy for people and social issues, helping people most in need, and there are many others as well. So I'm very proud about that, and I imagine you are as well. I'm also proud in the significant work in turnarounds and improvements in a number of key programs within Wesley Mission. And you've heard from some of those today when you heard from Grace, David and Lisa. In each of those cases, there's a lot of work that's been done in order to serve people better. I'm also proud in the less exciting but still critical area of making difficult decisions. Vision Valley has an awesome heritage within Wesley Mission. And despite the fact that it was being really well run, and we believe it was being well run, there were continual financial losses, and that was limiting our ability to help the most in need, the continual financial losses. So in the end, a transaction has been put together, and it's good to know that that is likely to go to, or is going to a place that we trust that God is going to use it well. But it's an example of us being willing to make the difficult decisions in order to serve the most in need. And lastly, I'm proud of the growth, not growth for growth's sake, but growth in areas that you've heard about today. Some of them intensive therapeutic care, Clarence Valley, home care packages. Parramatta Mission is likely to be an area where we're going to grow working with them around their programs. And I'm proud of that growth. And I'm especially proud because we also track, senior management and the board tracks the growth in how we are serving the most in need. And that number has increased steadily over the year despite COVID. And that's something that I'm sure that we can all be very proud of. So as I look back over the year, there are many things to be proud of. And I want to pass on the appreciation of the board to Keith and all in Team Wesley Mission for the year that was. So thank you to you. I also want to think about next year as we look ahead. Of course, there will be unexpected challenges, and we'll need to rise to those as they come. But we know of a couple of challenges that we already have, and one of them is, of course, COVID. We know that perseverance is going to be required because the adrenaline's sort of running out. But now we're going to have to continue to persevere in the face of this because it doesn't appear to be going away quickly. And as we do that, we will prove our character because we continue to serve. Another challenge we know ahead of us is the fact that there is going to be a change in our CEO superintendent. And for us at Wesley Mission, the role of CEO superintendent has always been critical. So it's a rare change, in fact, in leadership, as Reverend Keith Garner completes his active service at the end of the year. Now, I'm sure that we will work together as a team to really take the opportunity to farewell Keith with great appreciation and respect, and we'll spend a bit of more time on that today shortly. And I'm also sure, as Keith raised, that you and we will all welcome Stu. And I join Keith with saying that the board has a strong belief that Stu will be a worthy CEO superintendent for Wesley Mission, but he will need your support. I'd like to say also a few brief words of my own with regard to Keith. We are going to hear something more substantive from Keith Suter in a minute. But I stand here, I guess, with a few mixed emotions at the last annual meeting for Keith. On the one hand, perhaps one critical one, is a feeling of thankfulness. So I have appreciated the tremendous work ethic that Keith has shown, driven by a desire to make a difference as a follower of Jesus through Wesley Mission. I also am really thankful for the difference that his leadership has made at Wesley Mission. When he arrived 15 years ago, Wesley Community Services had a very volatile surplus. There are a number of years of loss as well. But now we can point back to quite a large run of years with solid surpluses and strong growth as we serve more and more people in need. So I'm thankful for that as well. I'm also thankful from a board perspective for the relationship of mutual trust that we've shared with Keith, and the way that he has constructively and helpfully shared leadership, both its joys and its burdens, with the board and with the senior management team. So that's the thankfulness side. On the other side, for me, there's a personal sadness. We won't have the same reason to touch base every week as... Perhaps, or maybe that's the answer. We're going to have a daily phone call. But I do hope and expect our friendship will continue in a different way as time goes by. And the last emotion that I just wanted to bring out was a feeling of anticipation, because I look forward with interest to hearing how Keith and Carol will continue to make a difference for Jesus in this world. And I know that that's going to be an exciting journey to see, and it will be something amazing to watch. So let me bring my comments to a close before I ask Keith Suter to join me up here. I could probably summarise my whole report in a few words, and it's this. Thank you to the whole of Wesley Mission, and to Keith in particular, for endeavouring to do all the good you can by all the means you can for all the people you can in 2019, 2020. And let's continue to do the same in the coming year. Let me now welcome Keith Suter up to the stage, because he's going to say a few words to you with respect to Keith Garner on our behalf. As you know, Keith has actually been in leadership roles within Wesley Mission for a long time, and he has worked alongside Keith Garner for the 15 years of his tenure. So Keith is well placed to give some words of thanks. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Michael. I'm just waiting to see what photograph I'm going to get. Oh, that's much more presentable. Thank you. Wesley Mission Sydney has been blessed by the quality of its leaders. The tradition began in 1884 and has carried through until today. The Reverend Keith Garner has therefore fully lived up to the mission tradition. By the way, a survey of chief executive officers of major Australian companies showed that they stayed in office for just over 4 years. Keith's 15 years at the top would represent an eternity for those other CEOs. In the Methodist tradition, the mission pays for one person and gets 2 people in return. Recognition and gratitude therefore need be given to the wonderful work of Carol Garner. She has been active in many areas of the mission's work, and Carol will be greatly missed. Thank you, Carol, for all of your assistance. I would like to identify 3 key features of Keith's work over the past 15 years. First, Keith has been a steady hand in a turbulent period of change and crises. He began at the mission just before the great financial crisis, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression of the 1930s. He is ending his time with the world engulfed by the coronavirus crisis. the worst public health emergency since the Great Flu pandemic a century ago, which killed more people than did World War I, which had preceded that pandemic. Throughout all of this turmoil, Keith has provided steady leadership, a clear sense of direction, and a willingness to make tough decisions. As society has changed, so there has been changed demands for the services the mission should offer. Keith has made some key decisions to make sure that the mission remain relevant to a changing Australia by exiting old programs. Changing chief executive officers is usually a source of turbulence in its own right. I've lived through 3 such changes here in the last 40 years. Keith is working hard to make sure that there will be a very smooth transition with a minimum amount of turbulence. Secondly, Keith has kept word and deed together. Back in 1884, this mission set an Australian example of how a Central Methodist mission could operate. The pattern of word and deed was followed in all of the other Australian capital cities and in some of the regional ones. Proclamation of God's love and a living Christ for a dying world were intimately interconnected with the provision of welfare services. Many of those welfare services were very innovative. For example, a few blocks away from this building, the mission over a century ago created a labour and registry department where potential workers and employers could come together to decide on employment opportunities. This was years before the Australian government devised its own labour exchanges and decades before Centrelink was established. Other Australian Methodist churches followed the example of this mission. Indeed, the mission created a network whereby mission superintendents and key staff could meet up annually to discuss matters of mutual concern. But alas, many of those missions in recent years have failed to hold word and deed together. At least one capital city mission has disappeared entirely. It separated word from the deed, each with its own separate administrative arrangements. When I last visited that mission, it was just a hole in the ground and was scheduled to be rebuilt as a vertical aged care facility. This mission has kept on keeping on. It is world famous for its combination of word and deed. A way in which the Uniting Church will thrive in the future will be by following the mission's example of keeping word and deed together. Small local parishes will need to amalgamate to take on the delivery of welfare services. They will need to become smaller versions of Wesley Mission. The mission will therefore remain as the trendsetter for the rest of the Uniting Church. Finally, the Reverend Keith Garner will be leaving a mission that is bigger, more diverse, and more financially healthy than when he arrived. His steady hand has enabled continued progress. This has not been growth just for the sake of growth. It has been the mission's response to a changing world and changing needs. Many of the mission's programs are very different with what they were compared with 15 years ago. Keith has left his mark on the mission. Additionally, the mission's increased prestige and recognition mean that government departments and other organisations and churches want to partner with the mission. An alliance with us enables them to do their own work better. To conclude, in the mission's official history, Professor Don Wright recalls the mission's ambitious beginnings in 1884. The Reverend W.D. Taylor laid out a detailed plan for evangelism, a musical department, welfare services, a savings bank, and residential services for sailors. Sydney was then the 3rd busiest port in the British Empire. 140 years later, the Reverend Keith Garner has provided an ambitious program of activities in evangelism and welfare. The techniques are now different, but the overall goal is the same. The mission is therefore very grateful to Keith and Carol Garner for all of their services and wishes them God's richest blessing for the next stage of their lives. Thank you.
I said there weren't many around at the beginning of my 15 years. Well, Keith was one of them. Bryce is sat back there, and Bryce too was one of them. And there's a whole host of people that are new to the life of Wesley Mission. You don't really capture this just over 15 years. It goes back many, many generations. Many of you don't know, but when I went to the grammar school and was about to take, we call them O-levels and then A-levels, my intention was to work with young people who were disturbed. And the title that was given to young people of that kind was mentally abnormal. That was the title in Australia as well as in Britain. It's a dreadful title. There are no abnormal and subnormal people in this world. And I chose to do something different. And I lived for many years with this feeling that some of the, and I think of the names now, Janet, Ewan, these are all young people who I worked with, and they were very, very disturbed young people. And I thought, I'm just a preacher, and I did media stuff then. But would I ever be able to fulfill that? I think Wesley Mission has given me an opportunity to be able to as it were, square the circle, as it were. To be able to bring us to a point where those two things can belong. Now, I was in the northwest of England. I was in northern part of Greater Manchester, and one of my folks was a man called Bill Ashurst. Now, today is a very, very important day because at the stadium tonight there will be a match. Bill Ashurst was the vice captain of the British Lions that came out here and hammered the Australians. So the thing that they did was the Penrith Panthers decided that they paid the highest fee at the time, I believe, $30,000, that Bill should come out here with his family to play for the Penrith Panthers. And if you read the history books, you'll read all about Bill's career. It's only lasted a few years here, and he went back to his native Wigan, a great rugby town in our area. And one of the things that Bill used to be good at was when it was wet and when it was miserable and when it was muddy, you didn't try to take the ball off Bill. And he'd have loved tonight, because it's going to be wet, muddy, filthy, and I should be shouting for the Panthers against those Melburnians tonight in the hope that for him and his history it carries on. But I thought about I listened to the weather forecast, because over here the weather forecast often relates to sporting events, and it talked about it being perhaps very muddy and hard tonight to play, and therefore they were deciding Melbourne should win. That's rubbish, of course. We know very well that it need not be that way. But at Wesley Mission we've been through some mud at times, difficult moments that we've had to journey through, and I could write a list of them. The time when the government rung and said, you're losing $42 million of work. $42 million. And in 3 days' time, you'll be able to announce it. So I walked around with a heavy heart for 3 days, sat in my office and cried with my senior team, because it involved 300 people losing their jobs. And I have never found people losing their jobs easy. So that was a muddy time that we were going through. I think of the public debate about the sexual abuse of young people and children, especially institutional abuse. I have to say, people got it wrong when they tried to put Wesley Mission in that bracket. For this reason, the Methodists had women in charge, not men in charge. Women in charge of the care of children. And although history will show that we were not absolutely exempt from any of these things, relatively so, it was so much smaller. But it was hard. It was hard for the whole sector to be able to hold its head up high and walk through those difficult days. And I met with friends from the Salvation Army, the Roman Catholic Church and others to talk about these issues. And that was another muddy place. The changes to certain leadership that had to be made, that meant that some people didn't accept it, didn't like it. All leadership involves those moments when you take those stands, you know that they're right, and you must do them. And you must do them well. I remember the night when I came in here and was inducted. On the front row was a man called Freddie Dwyer. Freddie Dwyer will be known by some, but not by all. Freddie Dwyer is still alive, and Carol and I visit him. He is in one of our government-provided homes. He lives in a small ward of 4 or 5 men. Freddie was very, very outspoken at times. When I introduced the modern Lord's Prayer, he always grunted through the prayer, whatever you're praying this prayer for, because he thought there was only one prayer, and that was the old prayer. But I received a telephone call. We used to visit him regularly, and at Christmas we used to take a present. And I used to take the regular presents. A friend gave me money to be able to give to such people. And I used to take these presents, and he looked at them, and I could tell that, these boxes of chocolates and all this kind of nonsense wasn't his way. I said, what would you like me to bring? Pies, he said, pies, that's what I need. And so we decided, and we've done it ever since, when we go to visit Freddie, we buy pies on the way to see him. But this is the story about Freddie. Because we went regularly and they got to know who we were, we became known as his nearest and dearest. We don't know how this happened, but we get calls occasionally to be told what his situation is like. I received a call in the office from one of the staff there. They say, we're ringing you about Freddie, and I thought perhaps he's ill or something's happened. And they said, no, nothing's happened. We'd like you to come to see us because we'd like you to do something for him. And I did go to see him, and he spoke to me, and he said to me, he said, I want to ask you something. You'll not like it. I said, oh, well, tell me what you're going to ask me. You'll not like it, he said. You'll not like it. I want you to take me out in the car, and when we get to a traffic light, I'm going to escape, he said. I'm going to get out of the car. You must not come out. No, you're right, Freddie. I don't like it. I don't like it one little bit. But anyway, the staff there asked me if I'd take him to see The Sound of Music. Now, this is the sing-along Sound of Music. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's at the theatre. The arrangement was that I would pick him up, take him for tea, and we went for tea. And what did we have for tea? Pies. And after that, Carol and I took him to the theatre. I think it started at 7:30. It finished at 11:20. It's a long do, believe me. And he lives a long way from here too. And we kept our eyes on him just in case he escaped from the occasion. And I thought, I'm not going to be out all night doing this. I took him to one of the great state of origin matches. And halfway through, he told me he'd lost his keys to where he was. Oh, dear Freddie. But Freddie's one of my people in the mud too. And when this mission forgets, the people that matter most are individuals, not government contracts, not church congregations, but individuals whose lives are often torn apart by the circumstances in which they live. When we forget these people, the ball will be taken from us and we'll never score a try. But we score the tries in the mud when we keep people at the heart of our work. Thank you for the privilege of sharing in this mission for 15 years. Those people who get the idea, this is all it's not going to be a big, difficult deal. It will only be difficult for me if this handover fails. It will not be difficult if it works in the way I hope it will, in the best possible way, for the kingdom of God to be enhanced, the name of Jesus to be lifted, and for the poor to continue to be cared for. I'm going to offer a prayer, and in that prayer of thanksgiving for our work will be a prayer in anticipation of what God will do through us. Let us pray together. Gracious God, we do thank you for this great place, for those who've had a vision during the years of what it could do, from the thought of it being a theatre to a church, moving its position around the city, knowing what it is to be a living church for a dying world. We thank you for this history. We thank you for the changes that have had to be made, not always liked, not always perceived in the best way. We thank you that you've still called us to care for our teams and our staff, not just to have ideas as managers and leaders of what we think should happen, but what is best for this place and for the care of people. May your hand be upon us. We pray for Sue and Sue. We pray that you'll bless them in their leadership. And that tradition of handing down from one generation to the next the service of Jesus Christ may continue. May your blessing be upon us. Thank you for this privilege that we've shared at this meeting of being together in the fellowship of Jesus Christ. May your hand be upon us, and the blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit be upon us and remain with us always. Amen.